Sorry, y'all. I had to move inside. It was getting too dark out there. But yeah, mindset is certainly an important factor, but it is far from the only factor, and that's what I'm kind of alluding to with a lot of this stuff about manifestation, the law of attraction. Affirmations can help, yes, but again, got to put in that work. Um, Affirmations and hard work, I think bringing those two together are definitely where it's at, like as far as the most return, both in mindset and actually creating, actually manifesting. um and part of that is visualization, yes, but you have to put in the work, put in the energy, and put in the work. um and I believe we should work together collectively, as a group, as the community, the broader community that is spirituality, to create an alternative, realistic, grounded, equitable, and inclusive philosophy of abundance. And that's a big problem or big lack that the spirituality community in general is suffering with right now. And I'll do what I can on my end to bring this about, bring this into reality, this philosophy that I'm saying. But just saying, as a community, we all need to work together to create an alternative, realistic, grounded, equitable, and inclusive philosophy of abundance, not this pie in the sky stuff that actually only maybe the privileged or a small fraction of society can actually use to their advantage, right? And that brings me into pseudoscience. So much pseudoscience in the spirituality community. And, I believe that comes with the territory. Like I said, you know, have an open mind. Like, I have an open mind, absolutely. But don't have an open mind so much that your brain falls out or you get sucked into a cult, right? Um, Stay grounded, right? Pseudoscience in general is rampant in the community, and there's so many problems with it. Something that absolutely has to be confronted. For example, fluoridation. Fluoridation, if it is kept to a low, safe level, is actually a good thing for dental health. It's not just a thing to intentionally block your third eye or calcify your pineal gland, and you know the the dictatorship, the matrix, or whatever is trying to keep you stuck in that. No, it's it's just a good thing that's done for dental health. As long as it's kept to a good, safe level, it's fine. Um, on that note, there's like these products out there, or like a list of dietary things you can do to decalcify your pineal gland, and that in and of itself contains a big element of privilege. You have to be privileged to be able to afford and buy a special diet, or products you supposedly need to consume to um, decalcify your pineal gland. You know, I think to keep your pineal gland healthy and open, um, part of it is mindset, right? Part of it is keeping an open mind and clearing your mind of mental clutter and chatter so that you can listen to that intuitive side of yourself and listen to the world beyond, and see that in your mind's eye, right? Um, but part of it is just taking care of your physical and mental health in general, like nothing special, like special products or diet you need to consume. Just eat an abundance of healthy foods that are right for you. Drink enough water. like drink plenty of water, drink an adequate amount of water. Um, Herbal teas can help too. I believe that, but work on breath work too. Work on taking deep, slow, rhythmic breaths. That absolutely helps as well, and get plenty of exercise too. All of that stuff is just great for your physical and mental health in general, right? But it also helps your third eye, your pineal gland, because it after all is part of your brain, right? You don't necessarily need some special diet or products that may be out of reach for you. Um, and with that, that brings me into mental and physical health and illness. There's so much pseudoscience floating around out there about crystals and herbal remedies, home remedies, naturopathic or homeopathic remedies, essential oils. Um, while I believe some of them are health helpful, they can be helpful in certain circumstances. Like definitely there is some truth and effectiveness to home remedies and herbal remedies. I would say that yes, and also holistic health solutions that take a little bit of the Western science approach and merge it with the naturopathic herbal home remedy side, and merge those two together for an overall perspective on health and illness, and improving those. Um, but they're not cure alls. They're not cure alls. They're not panacea, and to say that they are is completely misleading, and misinforms people, and can really result in people making their health outcomes even worse, because they won't listen to experts. They won't listen to actual Western science on things. Like, I've heard horror stories of people getting like cancer, for example, and then trying to cure themselves with like crystals or herbal remedies or something. And it's like, no, that I'm so sorry for you, but that's not how it works. Like, somebody needed to intervene and tell you that those things are not going to, you know, cure your cancer. And, same goes for like I was saying before about like depression or anxiety. None of these things, whether it comes to, mindset, mindfulness exercises, or like herbal home remedies, that kind of stuff, none of that, or crystals, like none of that is a cure all or a panacea for those conditions, and they will certainly not cure your depression or anxiety. You need to seek professional help when you need to get professional help, whether that's for your physical body or for your mind. Um, and I say that as I'm wearing a crystal crown right now. I just feel like it helps my energy. It helps balance my crown chakra and my third eye chakra. I feel like it act like I can feel it. But to say that it's going to I actually don't have any like chronic, like clinical diagnosed mental health conditions, for example, or physical conditions for that matter. So, but I'd be absolutely nuts to be thinking this could help if I, for example, had depression or something. It doesn't. If it is boosting my energy and my mood, it could be in my head, for example, but I mean, I am feeling it, but you know, it's very subtle. It's not something that's going to dramatically change you if you have like a clinical condition. But like I was saying, there is some truth to like natural herbal home remedies to certain conditions, or I mean not certain conditions, but just like if you got sick, if you got the cold or something, like um definitely those things help your health. They do. I believe that. But like I'm trying to say, it's not a cure-all, it's not a panacea. Um, I mean, and after all, like Western medicine, pharmaceuticals, they do get they do get a lot of the ingredients they need to make those prescription drugs uh, from plant sources, from plant medicine. It's just that it's concentrated and refined in such a way that it's very powerful and effective for treating certain conditions in a way that, you know, herbal remedies may not be suited for. And with that, there also is a lot of misinformation or pseudoscience about, for example, recreational drugs, for example, recreationals or psychedelics, and I believe there is a place for a few of those, at least just a few, a small handful of those when it comes to spirituality, yes, but also the potential to um, treat mental health conditions, to integrate that within the context of therapy. I believe there's major potential there, and that is being explored by psychiatrists, mental health experts, therapists. I believe that is something that should be explored more, and people should be more open to psychedelics and even just weed, for example. Um, but even still, those are not cure all. Those are not panacea. Um, those are just one element, one part of the overall recipe um, of therapy, right? These things are not taken in isolation. They're in a regimen, an overall regimen of therapy. Um, that said, recreational psychedelics, at least a handful of them, the ones that are not obscenely powerful or addictive or anything like that, those things that can be taken once in a while in moderation can help your spiritual practice. They can help ignite and open your third eye, for example, and they can help you get in tune with your higher self. I absolutely believe that. I've just putting myself out there. I have taken advantage of those things from time to time. Carefully and with discretion, in a comfortable, supported setting, right? I believe absolutely those things can help. They are actually sacred plant or fungal medicine, right? Um, but it's something that should not be used as a means of escapism, for one, or for being a cure-all or panacea to your mental health woes, for example. Um, it's just a once in a while sacred thing for exploring the spiritual side of yourself and exploring the astral realm and exploring the world beyond, right? Sometimes what is most needed is Western science based medicine. And sometimes medical remedies or prescription drugs made using chemicals you can't pronounce or don't understand are what is most needed to balance oneself out, either mentally or physically, and address ailments that spiritual healing cannot fix. Oftentimes, such science based approaches are exactly what is needed for optimal health and in order to better access abundance and spiritual healing. So yeah, if you're listening to yourself, listening to your body and your mind, and you know realizing you may have either a mental or physical condition or ailment, please seek professional help. see a doctor, see a therapist. I encourage you to do that. That is going to serve you the best in both the short and the long run. Um, crystals and herbs, they have their place, yes, but any severe chronic conditions or acute conditions, like you have an acute infectious condition, they can't cure that. I'm sorry, they can't. You need you need a little bit of both in life, right? Um, those herbal remedies, they have their place, but science-based Western medicine is where it is in the world for a reason. It's cured so many different infectious diseases, and hasn't cured cancer, hasn't cured a lot of chronic conditions or even mental health things. But it's presented very effective ways of treating those conditions, right? Treating those symptoms and giving people a better quality of life and managing those conditions, right? That cannot be ignored. Please listen to your doctor, listen to your therapist. And if you don't have one and you think you need one, please get one. If you can't afford to, and that's an issue, that's a problem, especially within the United States. And I think that kind of fuels this. It's sad, but it's true. I think that it fuels a lot of this pseudoscience and home remedy stuff in the United States, because we don't have universal health care. And when people go out and do get health care, they have exorbitant costs, and they may be in massive amounts of medical debt. It's something we absolutely need to fix here in the US as best as we can. But that doesn't mean you should dive into these herbal or home remedies or crystals and think they can cure it. They can't. They can help, but they can only do so much, right? Something that I forgot to mention is that, yes, modern Western science-based medicine, especially in the US, is far from perfect. It certainly leaves a lot to be desired from the affordability and accessibility perspective. And the healthcare system should also integrate dentistry and mental health all into one affordable and accessible healthcare system as well. After all, your teeth and your mind are inextricably part of your body, and they affect your health, and they affect the health of the rest of your body, and vice versa. Moreover, it mainly focuses, as in the healthcare system, mainly focuses on treating symptoms and treating and managing diseases after they've already happened. It makes the healthcare system look far more like a sick care system, if you will. The goal of healthcare should be treating and healing patients, after all, and not lining the pockets of executives, of insurance providers, or pharmaceutical manufacturers. The healthcare system ought to focus far more heavily on prevention than it currently does. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. There should be far more emphasis on eating a healthy diet, drinking plenty of water, getting plenty of regular exercise, getting plenty of sleep, stress management, environmental health, and urban planning for more pedestrian and bicycle accessibility, just to name a few, so that a lot of chronic health issues may be prevented. Just as health authorities urged wearing masks and social distancing and getting vaccinated during the COVID pandemic to prevent the spread of infectious diseases the spread of the infectious disease that is COVID, so too should our health authorities and doctors be urging us to do what we need to do to prevent contracting chronic diseases. And yes, that's another thing that I wanted to bring up. Vaccination related conspiracies and pseudoscience tend to be pretty rampant within the spirituality community, and that's a problem. For all the healthcare system's faults, they got vaccinations right. They're not trying to inject you with toxic chemicals or alter your DNA or whatever other conspiracy theory. They're just trying to prevent the spread of infectious diseases, and vaccines are the best way to do so. And no, I did my own research. Is not a cop out. Unless your research was a crap ton of scientifically peer-reviewed articles, and you also understood all of what you read, kindly GTFOH. A couple hours of Google research does not negate years of grad or doctorate level research and education, and hundreds of equally educated peers also on the case. Please, I urge you all to get at least a little more scientifically literate, exercise caution and discernment with what sources of information you trust. Please exercise some logical thought, critical thinking, and discernment. You know, there's a fine line between being an independent thinker and being intellectually lazy, letting some random alternative source of information do your thinking for you, and thinking of yourself as a countercultural rebel for doing so. On that note, I'd just like to conclude this aside by saying that the faults of modern Western science-based medicine are still no excuse for putting all your faith in herbs, tinctures, or other natural remedies. Yes, herbs and natural remedies may have a role to play in preventing and treating minor ailments within the context of a holistic approach to healthcare, but they are no substitute for the power and rigor of modern science-based healthcare when it's needed. All right, getting into what I like to call quantum woo. This one's short, but you know, the average layperson, only a small fraction, even among physicists, fully understand quantum physics or quantum mechanics, and even they don't understand it fully, right? The scientific understanding of quantum phenomena is rapidly evolving, and it is something that's hard to explain, but it doesn't mean that there is some magical, mystical explanation for quantum phenomena. Sure, it may play a role, but who are we to say? You know, that's an untestable hypothesis, right? You know, quantum explanations for different things or different spiritual concepts or ideas, it doesn't go like, can we please drop throwing out the word quantum recklessly and rampantly if you don't even understand it? Like, yeah, basically that's the gist of what I'd like to say with quantum woo, right? And then that brings me into frequency and vibration. You know, frequency and vibration, I actually do believe that there's a place for those, but I believe it's not a literal physical phenomenon. You know, if you're talking about it in the context of physics and material reality, like electromagnetic radiation, you know, that is a literal physical phenomenon, right? But if you're talking about it in the context of spirituality or metaphysics, you know, I believe it's not a literal physical phenomenon. And that's the misconception of people who are outside of the spirituality community, and they're seeing people talking about frequency and vibration. You know, there's definitely some people within the spirituality community that take that to a ridiculous extreme, and they might think, oh, it is a literal physical thing. But it's not. It's not a literal physical phenomenon. It is a metaphysical phenomenon. You know, the energy you put out there, and put towards others, it does help. It does have an influence. I believe that, but it is really, a, it's subtle. It's a subtle thing, and b, it's not a literal physical phenomenon. You know, we are conscious spiritual beings, so we can take advantage of that. It's a spiritual and a metaphysical phenomenon, but it's not literally physical, right? It's not something physically testable. And that brings me to anti mainstream, black and white thinking. Um, in the spirituality community, there is a big bias for, what I'd like to call anti mainstream, thinking. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's good. Like I said, it's great to have an open mind, but don't be so open that your brain falls out or you get sucked into a cult, right? Um, there's a place for the mainstream, and the scientific understanding of reality. It it got as far as it has, for a reason, right? Uh, and that's why I like to say that, science is the best tool we have for understanding, the physical reality as we know it, and, any kind of like testable hypotheses or phenomenon, right? Um, as someone who has a background in science, I can appreciate that, and I 100% advocate for it. So there is a place for mainstream thinking, and there's a place for out of the box, spiritual, like open minded thinking. You know, most of the time you should listen to, both your body and your higher self and your intuition. Just quiet your lower mind, your monkey brain. But sometimes you have to just use logic and reason to get to the right answer, and regardless of what your intuition is saying, it does you well to think clearly with your rational brain before you act or speak, so you don't get yourself in trouble. um but you know intuition, spirituality, metaphysics, all of that is not infallible. In my opinion, it is just the best tool we have to, that allows us to divine the answers to untestable questions, untestable hypotheses that cannot be sussed out with science, logic, or reason. That stuff that cannot be figured out in those kind of, science based or traditional methods, okay, use your intuition, have an open mind, and, use that use that tool, um, that allows you to divine those answers to those questions. But like everything else, it's moderation. Seek balance, whether it comes down to like herbal remedies or Western medicine, or you know um, science and mainstream perspectives, in general, and, open-minded, spiritual, intuitive perspectives. They both have a place. Seek balance between those two perspectives, like I'm trying to do and trying to advocate for all of you. And then there's the idea, you're exactly where you need to be. Um, Again, that ties into like karma and spiritual contract, or sorry, soul contracts, all of that stuff. Maybe in the grand scheme of things, sure, you're exactly where you need to be, but you could be, really suffering gravely in this, current reality, and, it's just another form of toxic positivity to say you're not, and you're just exactly where you need to be, regardless of if, what's going on in your life is objectively crappy, right? Um, that said, there's nothing necessarily wrong about where you are at from a big picture perspective. Um, what am I trying to say? Like you're okay where you're at. You are enough. You're good enough. You're worthy, right? Um, and everything you're experiencing is part of your own unique path, your own unique journey, right? Um, so in that kind of sense, yeah, you're exactly where you need to be. You don't need to rush to some kind of different outcome. If you're meant to get there, you'll get there, right? It's just part of the journey, part of the process. Trust the process, right? And then there's the idea of twin flames and soulmates. I'm not going to get too much into that, but you know, romance, love is it's a powerful and sometimes intoxicating thing, right? I can say that as someone who's been through a number of different relationships, and I'm now happily currently with my partner for 5-6 years now. So, but even so, I'd be remiss to say, oh, we're twin flames or we're soulmates. I don't buy too much into that kind of thinking, that ideology, and that's again why I'm gonna keep it brief because I just don't buy into it or believe in it too much. Even as I have found a partner that I love, I'm happy with, and we're going steady, and we'll continue to go steady, hopefully. But at the same time, it may be part of your soul contract or whatever, if you will, or your destiny to meet the particular loves you have had in your life and will continue to have in your life. It's part of your journey, part of your evolution. Um, but thinking that there is a twin flame or a soulmate can get you stuck in some ugly, sticky, tricky situations. You may end up stuck in a toxic relationship. I believe you're meant to come across the people you're meant to come across in life, whether that's, in a business sense, a platonic sense, or, you know, a love or a sexual relationship sense. I believe you come across those people in life for a reason. It's part of your path, part of your journey, part of your destiny, if you will. Um, but that doesn't mean you should be stuck in a toxic or harmful or abusive relationship any any longer than you need to be. You know, as soon as you have the resources and the support that you can muster and put together, and as soon as you can be reasonably safe in leaving, leave. You know, don't be stuck in an abusive or toxic relationship for any spiritual reasons or any other reasons for that matter any longer than you need to be. As soon as you have the safe, capable ability to get out of there, right? That is going to be the best thing to ultimately help and elevate your life and your destiny so much more than being stuck. It's only gonna do wreck both your mental and physical health to be stuck in those kind of relationships, right? Get out as soon as you can get out, please. I love you all. Um, that brings me into the idea of spiritual materialism. Um, so I'd like to just first start off about talking about the often overwhelming cost of magic items, books, statues, etc. as I'm sitting in front of them, right? Um, all this, that's a bunch of books down there too as well, and books right there. All of this didn't come cheap, but it's something I've gradually put together over like 4 or 5 years, right? It's not something I've boom, this ritual table, I've had it all. No, it's something that's gradually been put together piece by piece, and it hasn't come cheap. That's just the stark reality of it. If I had to do it again, I had to go back. I'd probably slow down my pace of getting all this stuff. I'm very, very grateful, very, very grateful for having all this in my life, but probably should have slowed down my pace on it. I'd probably be in at least a marginally better financial circumstance right now if I had not got all that stuff as fast and when I did and spread it out more. But you know, all that stuff didn't come cheap. It is an overwhelming cost to have a bunch of magic items, books, statues, and I could keep getting more if I wanted to and if I had the money, right? But, it's something that is an undue burden for a lot of people, especially if they're trying to support another person, they're trying to support their family, whatnot. Um, it's an undue burden, and especially if you're in a low income disadvantaged situation, it's not practical. It's not for everybody, right? If you want to expand your practice, but if you're someone of more modest means, you can have a simple practice with just a handful of items that are most meaningful for you or necessary for the magic you wish to perform, for the result that you desire in your life. And you can always expand and enhance your practice with more items later when you come into more resources, wealth, etc. Um, New Age spirituality, e.g., crystals and pagan and Wiccan communities, which focus on connecting with the earth, um, yet we're negatively affecting the earth in some ways if we consume in excess. Um, that's not good for anybody. That's not good for the world, um, for the better world that we're trying to live in, right? Um, be conscious, be aware of um, sustainable materials and practices, right? Um, be aware of your impacts that your practice may be having on the earth and the environment by making purchases to attain a certain aesthetic. You need a balance, moderation, curb your excess, and focus on conscious, sustainable, and ethical consumption for your practice rather than mindless consumption of commodities for your practice, altar, home, wardrobe, etc., just because you can. And Anna's analysis actually brought this up, and something that I definitely learned from her video about Palo Santo. Um, you might have seen in magic or spirituality shops little sticks of Palo Santo that you can burn. You you especially should really only use it if you have like a strong like dark entity, even maybe demonic presence in your home, right? You should really only be using it to powerfully cleanse and clear the energy of your space. It's something you really only need to use as a one and done thing if there is some kind of dark entity floating around you, right? You know, in general, you could just be using white sage instead to cleanse and clear your space. If there's no malevolent force around you, if it's just you need to clear away some stagnant or low energy around you, burn some white sage instead. But something she brought up is that Palo Santo, the tree where that those little sticks of Palo Santo come from, it's an endangered species, right, guys? It's an endangered species, so you need to be more careful and mindful of where you're getting that stuff. Um, the best that you can, seek out sustainable, ethically sourced elements and ingredients for your practice, right? Um, if you're not aware of where your stuff's coming from and how it came to be, look into it, do some research, or ask ask the shop owners that you're buying this stuff from. Ask where it is that they're sourcing their stuff, their ingredients, where it's all coming from, and what the ethical background of the production of those materials and the harvesting of those materials is. If you don't like the answer, please, I'm encouraging you to change um, change the source of those things to something that is more ethical, is more sustainable, is better for the environment and for the climate, etc. Right? You could benefit and may be interested to know the impact of your purchases that you make related to your spirituality, right? Some choice quotes I found on the internet related to this topic. One, I hate the way they make spirituality seem like something you can't have until you get the aesthetic down. Or that's the great thing about consumer capitalism. We can take something as sacred as spirituality and make it this asinine, superficial product for us to just prove to others and signal that we're holier than thou or more woke than thou. Buying more and more spiritual products to an extreme doesn't make you more enlightened, or it makes you needy and greedy. But extreme spiritual minimalism also doesn't make you necessarily better than or more superior either. There's definitely a need for a middle path. You don't need to be a new age consumerist, if you will, and buy a ton of stuff for your practice, or buy a ton of hippie or witchy aesthetic drip or accessories in order to become enlightened or awakened or what have you. In fact, I think it's actually quite ironic and counterproductive to that end, in my opinion. Um, but on the other hand, you don't need to have an extreme new age monk like ascetic type person who gives up all their worldly possessions in the hope of becoming closer with the one and reaching enlightenment. You don't have to be either one of those two extremes. The Buddha himself advocated for a middle way, a middle path. Yes, the extravagant spiritual materialism of the former is absolutely a manifestation seeking the fulfillment of your. Sorry, is absolutely a manifestation of seeking the fulfillment of your worldly desires, cravings, and attachments. But the asceticism of the latter extreme is like having a craving for lack of attachments, a craving for forcibly pushing away all material possessions or concerns out of one's life or to the periphery of one's life. In my opinion, neither of these extremes are practical, healthy, or productive for an awake life or enlightened spiritual path. Somewhere in the middle between these two extremes, between the black and white, is the way to go, the middle path. And the final topic I'd like to discuss, bear with me, we're getting to the end here. is the best self, or the idea of the highest or best self, right? There's nothing inherently wrong with striving to be your best self. There's nothing inherently wrong with tuning in and listening to your intuition and your higher self and trying to be that ideal, right? There's nothing inherently wrong with striving to be your best self, striving for growth and improvement. There's nothing inherently wrong with listening to your higher self and trying to act and be more in line with that ideal. But it is okay to be content with who you are and where you are in your life and your journey. I try to be very practical and mindful of this in my practice. In my affirmations, I include I am enough. I am good enough. I am enough just as I am, right here and right now. I am someone who seeks progress, not perfection. I am perfectly imperfect and unique, and that is beautiful and amazing. And I think it serves us all well to have a healthy balance between striving for constant growth and improvement and being happy, or at least being okay with where you are now and content with you as you are, with your flaws, insecurities, inadequacies, warts, and all. Growth, learning, improvement, and evolution are all normal, and they're not necessarily clean or messy. I mean, they're not necessarily clean processes, they can be messy. They're all normal, healthy, and natural parts of being in a human experience, and it's a lifelong process, right? It's not something linear. It's all part of being in a human experience, and it's a lifelong process. But for now, it's okay to be content with where you are now. It's not a journey. I mean, sorry, it is a journey. It is a journey. It's a marathon. It's not a race to the finish. You'll get where you're going, whether it takes 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, or your whole life, or even another lifetime. We're all on our unique journey, and we're all works in progress, and that's okay. You have the whole rest of your life to figure it out and to work on your life and to work on the work in progress that you are. If you made it this far, thank you so much for tuning in and choosing to spend this time with me. And if you made it all the way to the end, you're a real one. I love you all. Namaste. Blessed be.